So quickly, can you tell me what is it that you do as an anesthesiologist assistant?
We're similar to CRNAs in our daily responsibilities, but we have different state by state laws. So, in terms of private practice, anesthesiologist assistants.
Are CRNAs able to intubate patients?
Yeah.
Are you able to intubate patients as an anesthesiologist assistant as well? How much
hmm
did you end up taking out in student loans for your schooling?
It was just under, I think, $130,000. All of my federal student loans are completely paid off.
Wait, so you paid off the entire 130,000?
Yes, in about 13 months, I paid it off. So I was hitting like 10K, a little under 10K a month when I was like focused on my student loans.
Damn, girl.
As a group, everyone was getting raises throughout. Again, with COVID and staffing changes, it has become very competitive, I think, in the medical field in general. So by the time I left that job, I was like just under dollars for my salary.
You just converted every single nurse on my channel to anesthesiology assistants. What is up, guys? Jason here. Welcome back to the channel in our series, Nurses to Riches, The Road to Fire. Now, I've been a nurse for 11 years and have only recently found out that anesthesiologist assistants are a thing. I bet you didn't know it was a thing either. And guess what? You can become one without having to go the CRNA route. And my next guest is going to show you exactly how she's able to live on $500 per month while saving over 90% of her income as an anesthesiology assistant. We're going deep with this one, guys, and we're going to be talking career and money, money, money. So with that said, let's get to it. Chabely, tell us where you're from and what it is that you currently do.
All right. I am from New York City and I'm a certified anesthesiologist assistant. I work in Georgia currently, but I've worked in Florida and Missouri before.
So why are you working in Georgia now and you're from New York?
Yes. So this is a common question and an important question to answer in terms of anesthesiologist assistants. We're similar to CRNAs in our daily responsibilities, but we have different state by state laws. So in terms of private practice, anesthesiologist assistants work in only 20 states in private practice. But technically we can work in the Veteran Affairs, but we don't really do that. So I went into the profession thinking I wasn't going to return to New York. And of course, when you have ties, somehow kind of you get back to where you're from. So I go back and forth to New York and my states and where I work.
All right, so let's go back and talk about your history and your background and everything. Let me know, where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn. My parents are Mexican American and they had 5 children and we were working on a farm, but I always had this interest in medicine. And so just studied really, really hard in school. I thought I wanted to go to medical school and I graduated college. And that is when I started looking at all these other professions. I was looking at nursing and I was like, would I go into nursing? And I just kind of took a step back from the more pre-med track where I was doing research and took more opportunities in the clinical field. And I came across physician assistants. And I felt like that was a really good match for what I wanted to do and an expedited timing. But I was interested more in anesthesia. And so eventually I learned about anesthesiologist assistants. And that's how I transitioned into that field.
And how did you come across that? Like, were you just going on Google and typing different medical fields you could get into?
I love online searching, I guess, like Reddit pages. I also did a lot of searching when I had student loans for kind of like pages like yours. And that's how I came across your page when I had my student loans. I really took a deep dive into like finances. Yeah, I just found out about a lot online and I do my own kind of like online research. So yeah.
That's beautiful. So why did you ultimately decide on anesthesiologist assistant as opposed to all the other different medical specialties you could have gone into?
I thought it was good that it was going to be focused on one field versus physician assistants. And I had a big background in chemistry. I did research in pharmacology. So that was where my interests were heavier in. And then I thought that would be a good balance of like working alongside patients, but also a little bit more introverted than some of the other fields. So I thought it was going to be a good balance of like working in a team environment, but also having like some quiet time at the same time during the workday. So those two things I think spoke to me a lot.
And first of all, what type of school do you go to get a degree like this?
So I completed my bachelor's in New York City in one of the public school systems. And then I had a lot of pre-med prerequisites. And there were at the time 12 schools in the country, I think. So I applied to as many as I could, which was 3 at the time. And the programs that I got into, I ended up deciding on Nova Fort Lauderdale.
Okay, so do you need an associate's or a bachelor's degree to get into one of these programs?
You need a bachelor's degree.
Is there a specific degree that you need? Like, can you go into it with like a math degree?
So that's a good question. So a lot of people wonder, what degree do you need? What is going to be like the magic bullet? Like what covers everything to get into the program? program. There's no specific degree that anyone needs to get, but there will be prereqs like organic chemistry, biochemistry, calculus. So someone could come in from a business background, and people have transitioned from that, but they still have to take the prereq. There was someone that I've come across that was like a religious studies major, but she did all like the biochem, the chemistry. So you could do anything as long as the prereqs are complete and you do your shadowing and you have like a clinical background. So pretty open, which is really nice.
Wow, I really love that. It's very flexible because like you said, you could just have a degree in anything. You could have majored in something that you really enjoyed or you just wanted to explore,
Hmm.
gotten a degree in something like that, but you could have completed the prerequisites to get into the anesthesiology assistant program
Yes.
and you would have had the best of both worlds.
Exactly. I think, like, maybe if I knew about it before, I would have done like psychology. I find psychology to be really interesting, but basically, I'm a first generation, so I didn't know what major to do, and I liked chemistry, so I went with chemistry, and it covered a lot of the prereqs that I saw for medical school. But, it would have been nice to do something that I would have enjoyed also learning, that it's not as heavy in like the sciences in a way, in the hard sciences, and then merge those two and go into anesthesia. But my journey still worked out, so I'm happy.
Yeah. So you say you were a first generation college graduate?
My parents technically graduated in Mexico, but I don't know if that transfers. It's not like a transferable degree that they had, but they were teachers in Mexico and then they came into this country and they were farmers. So not the traditional background in medicine that you may see.
But when parents come here from other countries, what they envision for their children is for their children to go to college and live the American dream. And it seems like you're basically there. They've worked this hard to help you get to where you are today, right? So what do they think about you getting your college degree and getting to this point?
It was unique because I was in my family's business and they wanted as much help as they could get in the family business. So like as I was growing up, it was transitioning away from the family business and, putting boundaries and telling them that I really want to focus on school, which they did support. But at the same time, it was still like, okay, I can't work on the family business right now. I have to go and study. So it was a little challenging when I was very, very young. But now that, 10 years down the line, like they're so proud and they're so grateful, and they're proud of me. And I do my best to give back to them. They've given me a lot. So it's a good relationship when it comes to where I am today.
I love that. Okay, so at this point now, walk me through like the schooling. You said that you needed some prerequisites and you already had like your chemistry background and you had some of the prerequisites before you got into the program. Then once you're in the program, how does that work? What is the process? What kind of classes are you taking and how many days a week are you going? Run me through the entire process of what that looks like.
So I have a page about this, and some people have asked, is the program online? And none of the programs are online. These are programs where you're basically Monday through Friday, you're at school, you're studying on the weekends, on the weeknights. But when I was in school, it was a 2-year program. The first year was didactics. So it was like, I believe 15 months of didactics pretty much straight in a row, maybe like 2 weeks off for Christmas and like 2 weeks off right before the summer. But your life revolves around learning anesthesia. So I took physiology, anatomy, I took pharmacology, I learned about like the anesthesia machine, principles of anesthesia, ACLS, PALS, and then a couple of classes were repeated. So it'd be like pharmacology 1 and 2, physiology 1, 2, 3, and I think there was like airways. There was just a deep dive into anesthesia itself, and clinicals can be incorporated along the way. Depending on the program, clinicals might start from your first month of school, or they might start 6 months into the program after you have a better base for the knowledge. For my program, it was a lot heavier in clinicals about 6 months into the program, which I also want to bring up, but I learned during COVID. So that was also a little bit crazy because I would have been in clinicals more, but they paused for a couple of months. And so then I had to go right back into clinicals as a senior student, which would have been in the last 12 months or so of the program. So I had to bring up my hours as a senior student to also catch up from what I missed during COVID. So that was crazy time, but separated kind of into didactics and clinicals.
Wow, so you started the program during COVID or right before COVID?
Right before COVID. So that
Ooh.
was interesting.
Because there was basically shelter in place everywhere. Everything was shut down.
Yes, exactly. So clinic, we couldn't go there for like March until maybe August. Yeah, so basically from that main COVID time that no one was allowed in, but then we were allowed back. So then it was time to work even longer hours because we didn't have all those months of being in clinic. It was tough.
Wow. So quickly, we didn't go over this, but can you tell me what the definition and what is it that you do as an anesthesiologist assistant? Because we didn't speak about that yet.
So I'm an extension of a physician's care, basically like a physician assistant in anesthesia. So typically my day looks like, I wake up, I go to the hospital, and I set up my room. I look at the anesthesia machine. I look at the patient that I'm going to be treating. And I also look at the surgery and what type of anesthesia plan we will need. Sometimes the anesthesiologist, when I get to the room, already has the plan written out. We'll do general anesthesia with an endotracheal tube, but sometimes they don't. So, and there's also a lot of flexibility on what you could do for different surgeries. So if they're not already set up, they don't put out the plan, I could also read what the surgery is and have an idea of what type of anesthesia plan it will be. So I start setting up the anesthesia machine and my equipment that I need. I also draw up medications, and then I typically will then go to the preoperative area and I'll talk to patients. Sometimes it could be longer, sometimes it could be shorter, depending on how much history that patient has. The nurse will also come with me sometimes, and they'll have their question, the operating room circulator, and then we will both roll the patient back, and then depending on the anesthesia plan, the anesthesiologist will be there as the patient is going to sleep. If it's something called sedation, the anesthesiologist is usually in the area, but is not always necessarily there from like the second that they go to sleep. They might just come in, and I think they can kind of like pop their heads in throughout the surgery and stuff like that. But basically, I'm with the patient from the moment they're under anesthesia to the moment it ends, wake them up and bring them to the recovery area. Sometimes I do get breaks from my coworkers. Sometimes the anesthesiologist gives a break too. So very similar to a CRNA. I do work alongside CRNAs, but different training. And again, the different state by state laws where I can't work in private practice in the New York state, but in other states I can. So
Got it. So my audience, most of them are nurses or trying to become nurses, and they're trying to figure out what is the difference between a CRNA and an anesthesiologist assistant. So the main difference, can you tell me what the main differences are?
Main difference are the training pathways. So the nursing pathways, go through nursing school, get your BSN, work in the ICU. I think maybe now it's 2 years, 1 to 2 years or so, and then apply for the CRNA program. And the CRNA program is now doctorate. So in terms of the training, we've talked about how an anesthesiologist assistant could have a degree in anything, but still needs to have those pre-med prereqs. So as long as they completed those, they can still apply with the bachelor's degree to the anesthesiologist assistant program. Usually people have a clinical background, shadowing hours, things like that. Of course, everything has to be completed. They have to be a competitive applicant to get in, but there's a lot more flexibility in the background of a pre-AA. Then our program is still a master's. So there's no doctorate that's required. So slightly different training pathways. And then once we're working, a CRNA has more states that they can work in private practice. They could also be in the independent model. And I think they could also be technically like supervised by a surgeon. They don't always have to work alongside an anesthesiologist. Me as an anesthesiologist assistant, I always work alongside an anesthesiologist. So slightly different training. And also once we're working, it's slightly different, but daily responsibilities are more or less the same in my eyes.
I see. Are CRNAs able to intubate patients?
Yeah.
Are you able to intubate patients as an anesthesiologist assistant as well? That is
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah, it's not a really known field. So I have a page where I like talk about it a lot. And I mean, I also wanted to talk on your page because I know it is a lot of nurses, but I think it's good for nurses too to learn about like my field. Sometimes nurses have gone into my field, particularly if they're from like Florida, Georgia, the states that we're really heavy in. So that'd be interesting for people to learn.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to get into. I was just going to say, for those nurses who don't want to become CRNAs, they don't want to go through that pathway, they could just also go into anesthesiologist assistant program, right?
Yes, and they have done that. I have a page, and I know some CRNAs have commented that you have to consider the restrictions that anesthesiologist assistants have that CRNAs don't have. But if someone wants to work in the anesthesia care team model and that's all they care to work in, and they only want to work in certain states, I think it's still a really, really solid pathway for nurses.
Interesting. All right, so let's go through your career path. Where did you land your first job, and what was your roles and your responsibilities, and how much did you earn per hour there?
So my first job was a temporary job in Missouri. It was something for seniors that wanted to, as they're waiting to get credentialed with their long-term position, they could go and work at this job once they graduate. So I worked there for 10 weeks and I made $100 an hour, which I've heard that it's gone up in terms of how much people are making because after COVID, the medical field, I feel like exploded in terms of their rate. So I think I've heard it's now $160 an hour, which is crazy, but that's as a W-2 position. That's also something to think about. But my responsibilities are the same as they have been in all of my jobs, essentially. I worked with the anesthesiologist every day. I talk to patients, put them under anesthesia, put breathing devices in, take them out, make sure that they're breathing, drop them off, hand them off to nurses. I've worked now at 3 different jobs and I have seen different surgery types or procedure types depending on what is available in the hospital. But I believe the first job I worked at was a trauma 1 hospital. So I did do some like endo in trauma. I think I might have seen like some kidney, like some nephrectomies, just a bunch, what you expect to see in a trauma 1 center. There was a lot of different surgeries surgeries like a craniotomy, but it was a very quick job that I did, so I don't remember all the surgery types. But yeah, so it depends on the facility what type of surgeries I would be in.
So you said you worked for 10 weeks. Was that a contracted position?
So with that job, they had temporary job posting. Basically, they advertise themselves as a job for in between credentialing. So it's not exactly 1 year contract. It's like, hey, like we have this minimum that if you want to work with us, it will be for 10 weeks, but up to you. You can work with us for 6 months. And if you keep working with us, they were giving extra bonuses at the time. And that's because of the staffing. It's challenging for hospitals to meet their staffing needs. From what I believe, that's what they did to bridge their needs.
Interesting. But your position ended in 10 weeks, or did you decide to move on in 10 weeks?
I decided to move on. I really liked it. Basically, like that job, I had taken it without rotating as a student in the hospital, but I had heard that it would be something I could do while I was waiting to get credentialed in Florida. And some of the people that were my senior, they had done it and they highly recommended it. So I was like, I know for sure I want to do 10 weeks for this job, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay on too long, especially with it getting cold in Missouri. I was like, I don't know. I kind of want to go to Florida as it gets colder because I graduated in the fall. So I was going to start to get cold. So I was like, I ended up telling them like, I'll only be there for 10 weeks, but I had a great time at that hospital. And there were so many anesthesiologists. It was a trauma one. And there were so many different surgeries that I could see, so many operating rooms, and a lot to learn from working there. So I did like it, but I set up to start in Florida in the end of November. So I basically had set up my contracts kind of like back to back. But yeah, maybe I would have stayed longer if I didn't do that. But I just wanted to get my student loans done and start working as soon as I could. So I didn't leave a lot of gaps in between.
Okay, so now that you mentioned that, student loans, how much did you end up taking out in student loans for your schooling?
It was just under, I think, $130,000 in terms of schooling. And my parents helped me with some of my living costs. So I've paid that back. All of my federal student loans are completely paid off. But then I also still save to this day money for my parents that they don't expect to get paid back. But like I just have saved it. And that's something I intend to give back to them. So that helped me bring down my student loans, the fact that my parents were helping me with my cost of living. But I still think I did pretty well for 130,000.
Wait, so you paid off the entire 130,000?
Yes, in about 13 months, I paid it off. So I was hitting like 10K, a little under 10K a month when I was like focused on my student loans.
Damn, girl.
That was a lot. Yeah.
That's impressive.
It was a lot. Now I'm a traveler, so I don't really try to take overtime right now. I go through these phases where I really want to work a lot, and then like the phases where I'm like, I'm not gonna touch overtime for a bit. So that I'm happy that I did that. And now I can kind of just do my regular hours and not overwork myself right now. So I'm grateful that I finished off my student loan.
So after that job, where did you move to?
So after my first job in Missouri, I moved to the Tampa area, and I worked in that job for about 2 years, just a little bit over 2 years. Basically completed my contract, and I really wanted to be a travel provider. So I took a little break and I started my travel position in Georgia.
Okay. And how much were you earning in Tampa?
In Tampa, I started at $170,000 for my salary. I had a small sign-on bonus, and then throughout my time in Tampa, I got a couple of salary increases, which was just for the whole group. It wasn't like me, the special hardest worker. I got like special raises, but as a group, everyone was getting raises throughout. Again, with COVID and staffing changes, it has become very competitive, I think, in the medical field in general. So by the time I left that job, I was like just under $200,000 for my salary.
You just converted every single nurse on my channel to anesthesiology assistants.
Definitely look into the pros and cons. I do want to be transparent that, it won't work for everyone, but it still works for me, even though I'm from New York. I've gone back and forth to New York. My partner lives in New York, so I have to go back because I love him. But it still works for me. Pros and cons, but I think it can still work for people that don't, may not, like if you want to live in Minnesota, you have to consider it, but I think it's still a really, really good job. And even people that are from those type of states get into the profession and, they start working in Florida, the weather is great and they don't want to leave the state. So myself included, there's a lot of good opportunities as an anesthesiologist assistant.
Beautiful. I love this story. I want to hear more. Okay, so now you said you're traveling between both states. Also, you mentioned Georgia. Are you working in Georgia as well?
I finished my contract in Tampa. I had signed for 2 years and I basically did just over the 2-year mark. And I started as a locum provider, a 1099 position. So now I'm working in the Atlanta region, just a little bit south of it. Yeah. So now I work in Georgia. And speaking about my schedules, I've gone from 5/8s to 4/10s, and now I'm on 3/13s. So it worked out very well. Essentially, when I first started my first W-2 position in Florida, I was on 5/8s, and my partner ended up going back to New York because he's in tech. So he ended up having to kind of relocate when things went back to in person. So anyway, so I was on my 4/10s, and so that allowed me to go back and forth between the two states because I would have like 4-day weekends at least once a month. And so I would go back and forth. Now I'm on 3/13, and I've been pretty fortunate where my recruiting company, my hospital, they actually are really, really good with letting me set my hours. So right now I've finished working 6/13s in a row, basically. I worked on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday last week. And then this week I worked on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So now I have a couple days off in a row before I go back to work. So that allows me to be in this long distance relationship and go back and forth a lot more.
Wow, you are a busy woman.
Yeah.
How much are you earning as a locum tenens employee?
Because I've talked to my recruiter, since I have a social media page, I have asked him if I could post about stuff. He says to be a little bit more discreet. So
Mhm.
I'll tell you the range is within $180 to $230 per hour. And it really depends on where you work as well for how much you can make. As a locum provider, you also may get a stipend in addition to that for, getting an Airbnb or flying out of state from your original state. It depends on your situation.
I am so jealous right now.
No, I think about like I've been following your story and Monica's story, and I've honestly
Wow,
wondered.
really?
Yeah, I have. I follow you guys. But I was gonna say, I don't know if you guys would ever consider like doing like back and forth from New York to California. Do a couple
Yeah.
per diem shifts because I'm sure the rates would be a little better. I don't know, but it could be
Well,
worth it.
so at the moment, Monica makes $133 per hour. So it's not nearly as much as what you make, right? But you being a 1099 employee, you should know that when you're a
Yeah.
1099 employee or you have your own business, there's so many more advantages to that than being a W-2 employee. So our
Yeah.
goal is to become business owners and not have to worry about a W-2 income anymore. That's
Yeah.
the ultimate goal,
Hmm.
because there's tax write-offs you can do, and the earning potential is so much higher as a business owner or someone who's a 1099 employee.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, write-offs is good. And also like the 401k, you could kind of, depending on how much your business makes, like you can go even higher with your 401k contribution. So I think it's a really awesome opportunity for anyone like in the medical field to consider 1099. I don't see a lot of examples as an anesthesiologist assistant. So that's also why I wanted to do it. I was like, I want to be an example for other people and just, I'm willing to try something new. And sometimes it's challenging to be a locum and start over and be in a new place, like just get out of your comfort zone. But I do think it's still worth it. So I don't know if you guys would consider, would you ever consider
Well,
travel nursing or per diem, like out of state?
yes. Oh, so here's the thing. We're like in a limbo phase right now because we're thinking, okay, should we sell our house and just completely move to New York, forget about California? Or
Hmm.
should we keep our house and then just fly back and forth between the two if we ever want to? We can just rent out our house while we're not here. We thought about that.
Yeah.
And right now, we don't know which one to choose. It might change because we're not moving yet. It's going to be in about 2 years. We want to grow our business to the point where we don't have to work as nurses anymore.
Yeah.
But at the moment, we have about $350,000 worth of equity in our house. By the
Hmm.
time we sell it, it's probably going to be closer to 400,000,
Yeah.
and which means we can technically live like quote unquote rent free for like 2, 3, maybe 4 years if we move back to New York, if we sell this house, and then we can just focus heavily on growing the business.
Yeah.
Because
That's pretty.
I don't know if you know this, but we sell spreadsheets. There's other things that we do besides this YouTube channel that
Hmm.
actually earn us half of our income. So that's the goal, to continue to grow that. And also, like, I want to continue to build a larger community of nurses and healthcare workers who care about their finances and who want to reach financial independence. Not necessarily retiring early, but like just reach financial independence so that you can choose when you want to work, what you want to do for work, and when you want to take a vacation for 3 or 4 months at a time.
I think that's a great dilemma to be in between. Like, should we sell or should we not? And should we get this 400K in equity? Would love to get into real estate soon. I don't think I'm there yet, but yeah, I think you guys really have a solid, like you went in before COVID, right? And got your house. So that in
Yeah.
itself is just amazing.
I'm just surprised you even watch our channel. Like, why?
No, I got into the channel with, forgot what her full name is, but it's like with Financially Intentional when she did
Oh, yeah.
her student loan journey. I'm kind of introverted, so like when I was working out, like I like learning financial independent stuff while I'm like doing my workouts, while I'm cooking, cleaning. So I just came across your page and I was like, wow, like this is amazing. And I've learned so much about the nursing profession. Like I have so much respect. Just also the travel NPs that you've had on the channel. I'm like, this is amazing to me too. And even that in itself, I was like, wow, I had no idea that nurses could do that. So I think that you really are doing something amazing. And maybe had I come across your channel when I was looking to, what to do next, I would have considered travel NP. So I think that it is an amazing thing that you do. So I also hope to share my story, and maybe someone will learn from my story too.
Absolutely. Let me tell you, this video is going to get hundreds of thousands of views. I just
We'll
like you
see.
to know that right now. You know what? I actually interviewed a nurse. She's a CRNA and her name is Aisha. She goes by Aisha CRNA on Instagram.
Mhm.
And she used to work a lot more hours before. And now
Mhm.
she's reduced her hours. I think she works like 1 day a week, maybe 2 days a week at most. But
Mhm.
she's dedicated a lot of her time to real estate. She's working on like real estate syndications as well with her husband. And she's got a lot of major projects going on, as well as like a course that she sells in a mentorship program. I believe she makes in profit about $22,000 to $25,000 a month after you account for all of the expenses and everything.
Mhm.
And she's really just getting started with everything. And meanwhile, I said she's only working maybe 1 to 2 days a week as a CRNA, but most of her income sources come from various other places. That's the goal that I have. I have the
Yeah.
goal of being able to reach in different areas and pull money from those different areas as opposed to just like one income source.
Yes. I mean, that's also a goal of mine too. Like you and Monica's story does inspire me as well, because I know you guys are very family focused and you work less hours. While technically maybe you're not financially independent fully, but you're still able to have all the time that you want while you're still young and able and travel. So I feel like that's something that I've been thinking about too. Like, how can I balance more time with my loved ones, more time on my fitness? And maybe real estate is the answer. I don't know. But that's something that I'm exploring, and hopefully within the next 5 years, that's something that I could also say, like, I work 2 days, but I have all these other ventures that have come from pursuing this profession. Which there is another CRNA that I really enjoy. Her name is Rihanna Ferrio. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, with the Shoulder family,
Hmm.
but the Frugal Investor, I think, is his name on Instagram. But I think one time he shared that they put so much into her becoming a CRNA. Now she's like a per diem CRNA. I mean, I just think maybe the training or something, but it just kind of unlocks something in you where you now can pursue other things as a medical professional. Anyway, because we have a very challenging job, I feel like. In some ways, I think real estate is a little bit more less stressful in a way, I think, for a lot of healthcare professionals to do. And that, I feel like, ends up being the avenue that a lot of people pursue, like financial independence.
I'll tell you what the immediate course of action you need to take, and it's not real estate. You need to create a course to show others how to get to where you are. Because I've been doing this for a long time,
Yeah.
3 years now, and I've been a nurse for 11 years. And in
Mhm.
this time, I have never heard of anesthesiology assistants making as much money as you do. And not only that, like I barely hear about anesthesiology assistants. I had maybe a few of our subscribers mention it every now and then, saying, asking me to interview someone like you. And I
Oh.
think I've gotten maybe like 2 comments like that in the 3 years that I created this channel.
Yeah, we're small profession, and I'm definitely one of the loudest voices for our profession. I love learning about other professions. I love financial independence, and I feel like that kind of just has merged my interests, and that's why I'm like, we need to do that for our profession too. No one knows about us. Like, we do really great for ourselves. Like, let's be proud of that and let's highlight that. But there's a few other people that are social media influencers in the profession, but I'm definitely the most, I think, money focused in terms of sharing what the financials are like. I don't see it as a bad thing. I see it as a way of all of us taking care of ourselves. And I feel like people should be able to take care of themselves. And we're lucky enough that we're very fairly compensated. So that's why. So what course should I
Well,
sell?
you're telling me you don't have a course yet?
No, I just have a page and I just share the information for free, because I'm like, I make so much money as it is. I'm like, I feel kind of bad to charge anybody. So I just kind of put it
Girl,
out.
if
But
you could show people how to make anywhere from $100 to $200 per hour,
yeah.
they would be willing to pay you a lot of money to do that. If you can show them how to make over 150 to $200,000 a year, they would pay you. Especially people who already have a bachelor's degree. You need to be very focused. So I'm working on a course too. I'm obsessed with data and analytics and
Mhm.
researching, right? So you need to focus very heavily on one target audience. You got to focus on the easiest people. Maybe people who already have a degree in something like biology, something that can easily transfer into anesthesiology assistants, because those are the ones that you can have the most, right? Because they don't have to take as many prerequisites. So target people who already have a degree with some of those prerequisites. Maybe make it an Instagram post or a TikTok post and be like, hey, do you have a degree in biology with, and you've taken some of these courses? Then I can show you how to make over $200,000 a year.
Yeah.
Right?
I've been doing it for free.
Come on. Yes, you're doing this for free right now. Oh my goodness. I cannot believe this.
I mean,
And
occasionally people ask for some guidance, and I'll be like, if you want to pay me, I'll help you. But it's not my priority. I just feel already so blessed. I don't know. I should just tell everyone about my job and just put it out there.
you're
But
going to regret that.
yeah,
Here's the thing. You already provide this stuff for free. You do.
yeah,
But the difference between what you provide for free and what you will lay out in this course is you are going to lay out in detail, step by step by step, everything that these people have to do. Because you do that already. But is this organized? It's all over the place on social media,
yeah,
is it not?
yeah.
Exactly. They DM you asking the same questions that you've already answered in previous videos.
Yeah, literally all the time. I don't even open my DMs sometimes. Well, a lot of the time because I can't. I'm like, just look at my page. Like it's on. But I guess I should just make it. Yeah, I can make it a course, and I can also put videos where I'm like, here. Like if you're interested in the field, purchase this for like $5.
Exactly.
That's
And
true.
no, not $5. Okay. First of all, what you should do is, let's say you can offer the first 3 parts of your course for free, but you need an email. You need them to sign up for it, right? Once you get their email, then you sell them on the rest. You sell them on what will actually make them the money. The first parts can be like, what is an anesthesiology assistant? How much can you potentially earn? You got to reach out to their pain points. A lot of these people, they're living paycheck to paycheck, or they feel like they've gotten a degree. It's gotten them nowhere. Think about it. Somebody with a biology degree, they're probably not making a lot of money. They might be
Yeah,
making 40, 50, $60,000 a year with a 4-year degree, and
yeah.
they can't make it. It's like they're trying to pay their rent, they're trying to pay their groceries, and it's not enough. So you need to reach out to their pain points and tell them you don't have to live like that anymore. You got a bachelor's degree. You spent all this time to get a bachelor's degree, and this is how you're living. No, it can be different for you. You can get into anesthesiology assistance in what? How long does it take to become an anesthesiology assistant?
About over 2 years.
Exactly. Let's say 2 to 3 years, right? With dedication and persistence and determination, you can reach salary of anywhere from $150,000 to $230,000 per year because you already laid out the groundwork for yourself. You have this bachelor's degree, but in 2 to 3 years from now, you don't have to be living paycheck to paycheck. This is
Yeah.
how you reach out to people. You know?
That's true. I was gonna say my boyfriend, he's a data scientist, so he loves data and like has helped me with my channel, but he's also like very business oriented. But we've also been like, okay, I've been growing my channel. I don't know what to do with it. Like now that it's grown a little bit, like I don't know what's the next step. We have thought about a course, but not really how that works. I guess that would make sense. I have already given so much for free. So I think I would
Yeah.
consider it.
Which platform are you focusing on the most right now?
I'm focusing on Instagram because I feel like that has been the platform where I've gotten the most like brands reaching out to me. I used to be on YouTube, and I feel like YouTube is it's just a different form. Brands aren't really reaching out to YouTubers, in my opinion, at least from my experience, versus on Instagram, I've had a lot more growth at a faster speed. TikTok as well, but that for some reason my Instagram has grown faster than my TikTok has. So I've just been focusing on Instagram above everything.
I agree with that. Yes. So you focus heavily on one platform first because we've been doing this for 3 years now. And my primary focus initially was just YouTube. But now that Monica's helping me out, we've been able to branch out. But what I will say though is you need to be very careful with only having one platform. This is why you need to start growing an email list because if any of these platforms ever disappear, at least you have people in your email list to reach out to if you want to sell them something.
That's true. That makes sense. Yeah, I should definitely get on that because I have thought about that. I know TikTok is like maybe going down or something like that. I'm not sure what's going on with TikTok, but one of my friends, also an anesthesiologist assistant, is like now transitioning out of TikTok, where she was very successful because she's like, okay, this platform goes down. Like that's where she was making a little bit off TikTok. So she's gone onto other platforms. But yeah, that makes sense. The email list would be the best place to start gathering some of my followers and stuff. Well, anyway, thank you for the words of wisdom. That's why I appreciate like your channel. I feel like I've learned from your channel, and I wanted to hear what your perspective was when I also shared my story, because I have shared my story in a couple places, but I know that you also have that medical and like the finance mind both coming together. So I was like curious what your questions would be for me. So
Do you have a website?
no website. I'm kind of early on in my career, and I focus a lot on my student loans and like setting up a little bit of like investing. And so now that I'm a traveler, I feel like my income is really still really solid. So now I'm trying to transition more into like the social media and growing my page and my brand. So yeah, I haven't created a website. So I guess that's another step that I need to take.
That's okay. One step at a time. That's okay. You have a Linktree account.
No,
Okay.
no, I just
Do
have
you have a
everything
link?
on my Instagram. I have like the links that you can click on.
Let me see. Okay, give me your Instagram. Let me look it up real quick. What's your Instagram again?
It's called CA Lifestyle.
All right, so let's see. This link right here, this is just your YouTube channel.
Yes, and then there's
This one right here.
also
Oh, there's three more. Okay, let's see.
Mhm.
There's three more. Oh, did they interview you on Millennial Money?
Yeah.
Girl, that is awesome. That is something you need to put that on your webpage when you start selling a service or a course. Okay,
Yes.
and then is your TikTok account, and this is sponsor, right?
Yeah, like a brand deal that I have.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Okay. You need to, at the very least, get a Linktree account because with Linktree, what you can do is you can have people subscribe to you. So they can, like, say they want to get updates on certain things, they can subscribe to you. But I don't know if with Linktree you can download all of your subscribers, like the emails from your subscribers. Because if you can do that, then that's even better. Because then at least you can provide something for free. Like, let's say you have a PDF on, like, what are the benefits of becoming an anesthesiology assistant, or like what kind of prerequisites you need, what kind of jobs can you work in, what kind of, you can give them a free PDF if they sign up for your email list.
yeah.
And then what you do is once you get your website or once you get a newsletter running, you can export that email list to your newsletter and then just start emailing them from there.
Mm-hmm. You know, I've been doing it for 2 years and like I'm starting to see some success from it. So it's definitely been something that I've done like kind of on the side as I was paying off my loans and stepping into like my investing. But now I'm trying to put more into it. I'm definitely not the most polished, influencer, but I have had a lot of these ideas. I just haven't put them into practice.
That's okay. That's okay.
Mhm.
Listen, it takes a while to get to where you want to be. And it's a process. And
Yeah.
what you are doing so far is you're doing great because you're building a social media presence. For like a good 1 year of us having our YouTube account, I didn't have a proper website. I mean, I wasn't even selling anything on my website. I did have a website, but I wasn't selling anything on it. I wasn't
Mhm.
promoting anything in any way. I was just trying to like tell people what I did. That's what I
Right.
did for about a year. Then
Mhm.
after a year, I was realizing, I keep repeating a lot of the same content. Maybe
Mhm.
I can sell some of this content. So I started selling spreadsheets. And
Mhm.
the first year, I only made like $300 in sales. And this was like because I started the spreadsheet sale at the end of the year towards like September or something. Then the next year, I think I made $8,000 in sales. And then
Mhm.
it's been growing. Like it's been twice as much. Every year, it grows twice as much as the previous year. But
Mhm.
that's why this year I realized I'm going to create a course because I keep getting asked the same questions.
Yeah.
Even though I have a library of
Yeah.
these videos, people
Yeah.
also want support. They want you to coach them through the process.
Yeah. I've had that requested at one
Mhm.
point. They're like, why don't you have a website where you could just reach everything? I'm like, I have it in playlists. Like, is that not like already? But I guess people want like multiple forms of information. But
Yes.
it's definitely been a request that I've had and putting the effort and prioritizing the social media.
All right, let's step away from this for a little bit. Let's go over some of the other financial stuff. You said there are some pros and cons. I want to know what the cons are to being an anesthesiology assistant.
It's definitely a stressful job. There's times where, you're not stressed out. The patient is fine. The patient is healthy. But then there are those moments where you're dealing with a critical patient. They might be bleeding out and you have to call in extra help. The patient might be coding and feel like you're at the head of the bed. Sometimes the anesthesiologist may not be able to get in right away. So it's, a lot of pressure on me to lead certain things and to get control of the patient's airway. And I feel like in a situation where a patient codes, it is a responsibility of the room, but it could be directly tied to my decision making. So that's something that could be stressful as in my job. Sometimes people have made mistakes where they give the wrong medication to a patient and that could be life ending. So that is something that I think people consider. People say like, I wish I could make this much, but I'm not ready to carry that responsibility, taking care of someone's life. So I feel like just the responsibility we have is very real. I have a lot of respect for nurses in different branches, but I don't know if like they carry the same responsibility in decision making with the medications that we have accessible to us. Does that make sense? Like if we give too much fentanyl, too little, if we put too much gas on, or the patient may not do well. So that's something to consider. So I think that's
Wow.
part of the cons, but it's rare, the patient codes, but it can happen, especially depending on where you work. You could always work in maybe a trauma 3 or a center that's not a trauma, or a hospital that's not a trauma center, and reduce that responsibility. But even on the healthiest patients, someone can make a mistake. So for me, I feel like I carry that thought with me, even on my healthiest patients, on the most straightforward surgeries. I've heard of a story where one of my coworkers heard someone was getting just like a standard, maybe lap appy. They put in one of the instruments and that went into the vena cava, and air went into the vena cava, and that patient died. So again, even that patient was a healthy patient, something tragic happened. So anyway, it's something that I think about all the time. Part of the cons that I would say, it's not easy money whatsoever. We're very fairly compensated, but it comes at a very real cost.
No, you're right. That's true. That's something that not many people think about. Is like the reason you are fairly compensated is because you're taking on a huge risk. And so is the patient, right? Like something were
Mhm.
to happen to the patient. I mean, no amount of money could bring them back. That is why you guys
Exactly.
are fairly compensated. You need to know your stuff.
I was gonna say, and like every day, just be alert, be on, and
Mhm.
you can't have a day off, because the day you have a day off, something could happen. So you have to take care of yourself a lot. Someone in tech might not have the same response. Like my partner lives in or works in tech, so our responsibilities are just completely different. I think he wouldn't trade working my job for his job. So that's something people should also think about.
So what kind of tech does he work in? What does he do?
He's a data scientist. So he
Ah,
works for like a company that works alongside with insurance companies. And I guess he helps with determining like risk for certain things, different types of insurances. He also, I guess, assessed the risk of certain medical companies too. So it's all over the place, but just insurance related.
I love that. I was taking Python courses, and for like maybe 3, almost 4 months, I'm so obsessed. Like I said, I'm obsessed with data and analytics. So like I was like,
Mhm.
oh, it only makes sense that I study Python because I'm trying to automate everything that I do. And
Yeah.
then I just didn't have enough time for it because I had a private tutor. Like with our son, oh my goodness, we used to be free before he came along. Now it's like we have no time for ourselves, especially trying
Mhm.
to run this business, the YouTube
Mhm.
channel, and everything else. And our job. So your partner lives in New York and you're living in Florida, or do you just go work in Florida?
No, so now I have moved to Georgia for work.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
my residence is based in New York, and I did that because I essentially can write off traveling back and forth to New York. My family lives in New York, and my partner lives in New York, so that's where I spend a lot of my free time. But yeah, my partner lives in Manhattan, so he's living a really nice tech-heavy job in the center of the city. He loves it, so he really doesn't want to leave. Maybe he will leave down the line he's really the one that just doesn't want to leave New York. I'm willing to leave New York, but going back and forth.
Well, I totally get him because we miss New York every single day. I mean, it's because we live in Sacramento right now, and Sacramento to
Mhm.
us is extremely boring. It got us to where we are today, though. I will say that,
Mhm.
like, and you know what? Raising a family is better, I think, here because our son, we have a park right down the street. It's very family oriented out here. And in New York, it's just like lots of busyness, lots of things going on. However, in New York, because there are so many things to do, you don't necessarily need the money to do those things. Like, for example, if you want
Yeah.
to go to Central Park, you spend an entire day in Central Park and
Mhm.
just walk around and enjoy yourself and feel like you're not really in a city because the
Yeah.
trees just cover all the buildings. And then, you can just walk up and down Manhattan. Because we lived in Manhattan too, and that's what we did all the time.
Yeah,
And
I've
just,
grown to like New York a lot. I was from Brooklyn and I also
mm,
lived kind of upstate with my parents on their farm. So I lived a quieter life. But now that I visited him, I appreciate going back and forth between the two. Like if I'm outside of New York, I do miss it. But then when I'm in New York, I do miss the quietness. We haven't walked through Central Park too much. So maybe that would be the balance to kind of bring that quietness into the city. But I've absolutely loved him living in Manhattan. I've grown to really love it. Like we like to go to the sauna all the time.
mm.
And, you could find something to do. You could go to really nice gyms, get great food. It's just, I do appreciate it a lot more. But I guess I didn't appreciate it as much when I was growing up because I didn't have that much money. But now I do feel like I really enjoy it.
See, that's the thing. New York, People who have money really enjoy living in New York.
Yeah.
It's usually people who are middle income or lower income. And I totally understandably, it's a struggle to survive in New York if you don't have the money because I grew up in the projects in New York. I know what it was like. But now that we have the money, it's like, okay, we don't have to worry about our rent. We could spend $6,000, $8,000 on rent and it's not going to really phase us. Back then,
Yeah.
that was unimaginable. I remember when Monica and I were living with her mother while we were in nursing school, and
Hmm.
we were paying $580 a month for rent because she was in a like it's almost like a Section 8 apartment. It was in a luxury building, but it was a Section 8 apartment, and we were only paying $580. I could not have imagined ever at that time that eventually we'd be able to afford rent between $6,000 and $8,000 a month. There's no
Yeah,
way.
it's insane.
No.
That I agree. Thinking about myself, like when I looked into the field, I thought that 140,000 was what I was going to make, and I was like, please, I hope that there's still jobs that, that pay that much when I graduate. And now like I feel like I have negotiated for more, and like I don't know, it's just a different world, and I try to remember the young me that just hoping and praying to God like there's going to be something for me, right? Like at the end of this journey, and like you said, in nursing school and AA school, just not even understanding what was on the other side of school.
Yeah. So let's talk about some other parts of your finances. Like, what is your cost of living like? Like, how much do you spend on groceries? Do you have a car? How much do you spend on that? How much is your rent? All of those things. Can you go over that?
Okay, so my numbers are different now as a travel provider because some of it is paid through my company. Now, like it's easier to say as a W-2, my rent, I split it with a roommate. My rent was maybe under 1,400 for utilities. Now, as a travel provider, I do Airbnbs and get a stipend that is essentially covers the Airbnb cost. So that's the tricky thing. I don't know if I consider that out of my income.
I would not because you don't necessarily have to pay that. So the company is paying for that. So the other parts of your expenses, what are they?
So Airbnb is more or less covered. I do have a travel stipend, which I use for flights. So a lot of that gets covered too. Then I also have food stipend, certain amount per day, I believe. And I also get free food in the hospital for 2 meals when I'm working. So a lot of my costs are covered. In terms of car, that is something that my parents gave me, which I have paid back. So that's not really a big cost. Car insurance is relatively affordable. Moving from Florida to Georgia, it went down a ton. Like my car insurance, I think for a couple months was around $900. Like I do the 6 months at a time. Gas probably under 100 a month because I mostly go to work and then I go to like the airport. I go home. Like I'm not driving my car a lot. An expense that I do say that is a recurring expense for me is when I get out of the airport, I take a Lyft or Uber to basically visit my loved ones. And then that's a business expense essentially. That gets covered through my business. So in terms of my costs, my fund budget might be like $500 for, I don't even know because I don't spend that much. Let's say like I'm trying to put a number to it because I really haven't spent so much because I'm so busy too. Like I'm working and then I come back, so I get tired and then I'm working on my social media. So I don't really spend that much. I go to the sauna with my partner and that might be like $30 a month. My gym membership might be $30 a month. And again, if we get takeout, it might be like $30 or something, but there's not that much expenses. A lot of it is through my business.
You are living like a poor person on a rich person's salary. That is amazing.
Well, that's because I grew up as a poor person, essentially. But I did travel a lot last year. Last year, I went to 5 countries. This year, I'm like, I'd rather just relax at home and go maybe to the sauna and eat some takeout. Like, I'm okay. Like, I don't need to do travel that much this year. But next year, I hope to do a big trip in Europe. But I realized I don't need to travel that much, actually. I like my day-to-day routine more than anything.
That's what happened to Monica and I. I think it was 2022. We traveled to like 8 destinations. So one of them was the Maldives. And that
Mhm.
trip alone, it took us 36 hours just to get to the Maldives.
Yeah.
But we were exhausted after that year. And we said, you know
Mhm.
what? Let's just focus on our business in 2023 and let's just not travel as much. I mean, we went to like maybe 2 countries or 3 countries in 2023. So it wasn't as
Mhm.
much as we normally do.
Mhm.
But this year, because we're still growing and focusing heavily on the business, we're only
Mhm.
going to go to Bora Bora and maybe another country. So those
Mhm.
are probably the only two.
Like that's what I want to do. Like maybe one new country a year. You get everything that you want in a way, and you're like, I'm okay right now.
Totally agree. So what do you do with the rest of your money?
Right now, I'm kind of just holding it in my business account because I'm trying to get guidance essentially from one of my accountants on how to maneuver and like how to possibly reduce my taxes at the end of the year. So I haven't really moved my business money too much. And then again, there are a lot of things that I can write off through my business. So I haven't really paid myself from my business. So it's just kind of sitting there. I did save some money when I essentially quit my last job to have a solid emergency fund, which was about a year of expenses. So
Wow.
if I really, really need to spend something, I might take out of that. But I haven't had that many expenses. I'm going to go to Colorado soon. So that might be something that I have to pay for. And that might be like $2,000 to, have fun and enjoy Colorado. But this is a year I felt like I really wanted to get into my business and really just get comfortable with it before maybe next year I'll do a little bit less work because I really don't spend that much. So I'm like, maybe I should take some time to myself and enjoy more free time so that become a more well-rounded person.
Geez, at the very least, I feel like you should have like a high yield savings account for your business because you're all that money is just inflation's eating all of it up.
I know that's what I have considered. I did open a high yield savings for my business and my accountant said that I could move into that. But I just feel like I've been so busy that I haven't really, I know it's terrible, but I really should move it to high yield savings and then figuring out what to do with that at the end of the year. But
Do you ever plan to have kids?
I never planned for it, but my partner
I
has.
was just gonna say, because if you did want to have kids, I can't even imagine how stressed out you're gonna be because that adds another layer of stress to your life.
Yeah.
You know what? One step at a time, I guess. One step at a
Yeah.
time.
That's also the dream that like maybe somehow I figure out my life enough where my profession is also hoping to open up more states. So hopefully down the line, if we do have a state that is close enough to family and close enough to New York, that's a potential possibility. But it hasn't been a long-term dream of mine just because I saw my parents struggle with 5 children and I lived in poverty. And like for me, that was not something that I hoped for someone to grow up in. I honestly could really take care of a child, I think, and have much more resources, but I think that's just something I have to get past. So again, I'm just getting past like those childhood traumas of like not having money and not wanting to spend. So
Let me tell you. So Monica and I, we have a 17-year-old daughter who's going to be 18, and she's not my biological daughter, right? She's like Monica's biological daughter, but I adopted her. I came into their lives when she was like 15 months old. I knew Monica before she had her. Anyway,
mhm.
so we had such a hard time raising this girl because she put us through a lot. She's
Yeah.
she's better now. She's much better now.
Yeah.
But we told ourselves we are not gonna have a kid. No way. And
Yeah.
then here comes our son 3 years ago. And I'll tell you this: at one point, I know whoever's listening to this is probably gonna get triggered by this, but at one
Mhm.
point when we found out we were considering an abortion, like we were like,
Mhm.
we need to go, and because we found out when she was like 4 weeks pregnant, and we said
Mhm.
maybe we can do something about this. So we scheduled an appointment immediately so Monica can go to her doctor. But we had already planned a vacation. We went on a road trip across the west coast,
Mhm.
and it was a 14-day trip. So Monica couldn't make her appointment until she was like seven, almost like 8 weeks, basically.
Mhm.
So when she came back, she went to her appointment, and I was at work. And I'm at work. It was like 4 p.m., and I get a call from Monica. And on the phone call, she's crying hysterically. And I already knew like why she was crying. She's crying probably because she's regretting it. Like she doesn't want to go through with it.
Oh.
But then she tells me that she heard his heartbeat, and it just sunk. My heart just sunk, and I was like,
Yeah.
"We are such evil human beings to want to do this. We are
Yeah.
not going to do this. There's no way." So I told her, I was like, no,
Yeah.
we should not go through with it. And we did it. And I'm so glad we didn't go through with it because our son is the most precious thing in the world. Like he makes us smile every single day. It's the best thing that ever happened to all of us, including our daughter. She's so
Mhm.
happy that he's around. Like he makes
Mhm.
us all smile every day.
Mhm.
So all that to say is while we were going through that process of figuring out if we should have had him or not, we had like a family meeting because like my family is very close with us. Like we're all very close. And
Yeah.
we had a Zoom call basically, and my brother was on the line. He's very analytical like me, right? He's like,
Mhm.
Jason, what the hell are you doing? You guys are in such a financial position that you can afford to take care of this kid, and you're thinking about getting an abortion?
Yeah.
He's so upset with me. And I think just like him, we think alike. And he's like, and I'm thinking, yeah, you know what? He's kind of right. Back then, when we were raising our daughter, we were not in a good financial position. That's why we struggled. But
Mhm.
now it's so easy. Like we're giving our son everything he needs, and we don't
Mhm.
have to worry about the money anymore. Like,
It's definitely a trauma that I'm slowly getting past. For myself, my partner has really been helping me. He also grew up like me, like low income and really got himself to a better position. He is a much more, I feel like, balanced individual where he's like, like, we can do anything. Like, I'm sure if it ever came, like, I love him so much, like, I would definitely consider it. But poverty, it weighs on a person. So that's why I put my channel out there, because it makes the difference in someone's lives. And I know you've put your channel out there and it's made a difference in a lot of people's lives. So I'm very happy that it worked out for you
Yeah.
and that you.
Thanks. Yeah, and as you get older, how old are you, by the way? I forgot to ask you this.
I'm 29.
Okay, yeah. So as you get older, you start realizing that you have a little more patience than you used to when you were in your younger years. When we were younger, like, we had no patience for our daughter. As we grew older, because I'm actually 39 now, like, I'm old. So as I grew older, I started having a lot more patience. My son will, like, make the biggest mess in the house, and I'm like, okay, I'll just clean it up. Back then, I
Yeah.
would have been yelling. I would have been yelling at our daughter.
Yeah.
So you get it.
All the time.
Eventually, if you decide to have a baby, you
Hmm.
will be in a position where you will be a mature adult who is financially stable, who will be able to support that baby. I'm not telling you have to have a baby. There's people who
Yeah.
choose not to have kids, and that's totally fine too.
I think
Yeah.
both will work out either way, but
Yeah.
definitely in the future, something to consider.
Okay, so for my audience now who wants to reach out to you, how would they go about doing that?
The best way is my comments on CAA Lifestyle or YouTube. The DMs I don't usually open as much, because it's like I want to answer one question, but then I get just questions throughout and it becomes overwhelming. So I will say the best thing is my comment section.
Okay, and what's your social media handle again?
CAA Lifestyle on Instagram and also YouTube and TikTok.
If you enjoyed this video, then watch this video here where I speak with a nurse who works as a CRNA and has multiple streams of income, generating over $22,000 per month in profit.